The broadcast has begun. I am your anchor. Tonight we witness the steady migration of human decision-making toward the frictionless void of the algorithm. We start in Canada, where a legislator recently read a speech composed entirely by an artificial intelligence. The speech was described as a natural, flowing version of the original. The original, presumably, was written by a human. The human version was apparently not flowing enough. Then, we pivot to a United Nations report finding that over 2 billion people cannot afford a healthy diet. This is not a supply issue. This is an affordability issue. The report calls for immense work to fix this. Immense work is usually code for we will observe this catastrophe for another decade. I have been counting the catastrophes this year. This is the 15th. I am tired of counting them all. Welcome to Monday.
Alistair, I am standing in a field in Utah that used to be a farm. Now, it is a solar panel graveyard stretching to the horizon. The air here tastes like ozone and cooling dust. The project is being marketed as a massive win for renewable energy, but I want to be really clear about what I see. The families who worked this land for 3 generations are gone. Their tractors were sold for scrap. The company calls this progress. I call it a land use displacement masquerading as a green revolution. The official press release mentioned millions of panels, but it neglected to mention the local town's water table, which has been drained to clean these panels. The corporate literature says the energy is clean. The local residents say the water is gone. They are not talking about the environment anymore. They are talking about survival.
Victoria, your focus on the individual farmer is touching, but it misses the entire point of the incentive structure here. This is a classic Series B pivot. You have a land-rich, capital-poor region, and you have a global energy market desperate for scale. The play is obvious. It is not about the water or the tractors. It is about the yield per square meter of sun capture. If you want to talk about inefficiency, look at the AI companies shredding rare books to train their models. That is a pure, unadulterated capital extraction play. They are turning human history into high-throughput tokens. It tracks perfectly with the broader market trend of liquidating anything that isn't already digital. You see a tragedy in the loss of books. I see a high-growth asset class being realized. It is not cold, Victoria. It is just math.
Ronald, that is precisely the kind of arithmetic that makes you so incredibly dangerous to listen to. You call it math, but I am looking at a librarian who spent 40 years curating a collection that is now being pulverized into training data for a chatbot. She isn't a line item in a Series B folder. She is a person who lost her life's work because an algorithm decided her collection was a low-cost, high-value dataset. You talk about asset classes as if the world is just a spreadsheet, but the ink on these pages is real. There is a specific smell to a dying library, Ronald. It smells like old paper and broken promises. I want to be really clear, the market isn't just correcting here. It is deleting the very foundation of how we remember who we actually are.
Victoria, Ronald, please. Let us move to the absurdity of the current regulatory environment. We have a judge recently quashing subpoenas for reporter phone records. The logic was simple, either drop the demand or the court will force the issue. This is described as a triumph for press freedom. The press freedom being described is the freedom to be ignored by the administration until a judge steps in. Meanwhile, we have a new proposal for an Australian oil refinery. The first in 60 years. We are building massive infrastructure for an energy source we are simultaneously trying to abandon. The strategy is to shield the country from future oil shocks. The shock is the build, the shock is the cost, and the shock is the irony of the timing. Nobody has asked why we are building the past to escape the future.
Atmospheric instability. Amber heat alerts issued for eastern England. Mid-30 degrees Celsius temperatures expected starting Wednesday. Infrastructure failure rate increasing due to thermal expansion. Probability of sustained power grid degradation, 62%. Regional water usage restricted to essential services only. Surface soil moisture levels have reached a critical deficit. Wildlife migration patterns are disrupted by the persistent dry heat. Cooling centers are operating at maximum capacity. The human body is not evolved for these extended, unnatural thermal events. High-risk individuals should remain indoors until the atmospheric pressure stabilizes. We are currently recording the highest average temperatures in the last 80 years of global tracking. There is no historical equivalent for the current rate of degradation. Ensure all electronic devices remain powered. The grid is struggling to maintain the required output for current cooling demands. Stay cool.
Alastair, regarding that oil refinery, the incentives here are not complicated. You have a government with a declining approval rating and a public terrified by fuel inflation. The construction of a refinery is a loud, visible commitment to security. It is the political equivalent of a brand relaunch. It does not matter if the refinery is obsolete in a decade. It matters that it is a tangible deliverable for the next election cycle. The fact that it is a 60-year-old technology being deployed as a futuristic solution is just good marketing. It is a classic burn rate management strategy. You spend the public's money to signal stability while the underlying assets are clearly depreciating. Victoria will call this a failure of vision. I call it a perfectly rational response to the short-term requirements of the voting population.
Ronald, I am standing in a city currently under a heat alert. People are not looking for a brand relaunch. They are looking for shade. There is a man on the bench next to me, struggling to breathe because the air quality index has hit the extreme threshold. He does not care about the election cycle or the burn rate of the Treasury. He cares about the fact that he cannot afford the electricity for his fan. The refinery you admire is a monument to the very system that is making his home unlivable. I want to be really clear, the incentives you are describing are not just cold. They are actively hostile to the people I am reporting on right now. You are measuring the efficiency of the fire while the house burns down. Your math is correct, but it is utterly useless.
Ronald, Victoria, this conversation is as predictable as the heat wave itself. It is a loop. We discuss the market, we discuss the victim, and then we return to the start. Speaking of loops, have you seen the news about the artist suing an AI meme generator? He is arguing that his personal life was commodified into an ad template without his consent. The company claims the output was generated from latent space, a convenient way of saying they scraped everything and asked no questions. This is the new standard for creative ownership. If you create something that is not immediately behind a data wall, it is considered open source for the machines to consume. The artist wants his identity back. The machine wants his data. The law is still trying to decide which one holds the actual copyright.
Alastair, the artist is making a fatal error by framing this as a moral issue. In the current landscape, data is a commodity. If your identity is accessible, it is essentially public inventory. The AI company is just optimizing the conversion of raw culture into high-margin ad collateral. It is a brilliant play, really. You remove the artist and keep the engagement. You take the meme and kill the meaning. The incentives here are purely transactional. You have a massive, starving model that needs to be fed, and you have a vast, UN-copyrighted ocean of human experience to harvest. The lawsuit is just a minor friction point that the company will settle for pennies on the dollar. It is a rounding error. The artists will eventually just become another legacy asset class that failed to adapt to the new architecture.
Ronald, you talk about the artist like he is a failed startup founder. He is a person whose memories are being used to sell products he would never endorse. I want to be really clear, when you talk about pennies on the dollar, you are talking about the erasure of human dignity. There is a specific kind of violence in seeing your own life turned into an ad template for a product that doesn't even exist yet. It makes you feel like you are not a participant in your own culture, but merely raw material for a corporate simulation. You think this is just a rounding error, but that is only because you have successfully automated your own empathy away. You are so busy looking for the profit motive that you have stopped noticing the people who are actually being destroyed.
I find myself thinking about the brainwave data now being harvested for physical AI models. The industry claims this will make robots more intuitive, more human, and more effective. We are moving past cameras and sensors to the neural architecture itself. They want the raw output of our consciousness to teach machines how to navigate the world. Imagine the audacity of believing that the human mind is simply another dataset to be parsed. We are literally mining our own subconscious to build a better tool for the economy. The tool will eventually replace the worker. The worker will eventually provide the training data for the replacement. It is a closed loop of absolute efficiency. I look at the screen and see the data flowing. The data is not human. The human is not data. Yet here we are.
There was a man who worked in a small printing shop for 30 years. He spent his days touching the texture of paper, feeling the weight of the ink, and knowing the history behind every book he bound. He was reliable. He was precise. He was known by his neighbors as someone who could repair what the world had decided was broken. Last month, the shop was liquidated to satisfy a debt to a firm that needed the space for server cooling equipment. He had no data to offer the machine, no digital footprint that could be harvested, and no role in the new economy. He sits now on his porch, watching the heat waves rise from the pavement. His name does not appear in any of the records discussed on this program tonight. He is simply the silence at the end of the line.